It's week 3. We're talking about relationships, love, dating.
Wait, is this you really?
We're live. We are live.
Okay.
My name's Jordan. This is my wife, Lauren. How you doing?
Hello. We're doing great.
You ready for the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a great series so far. We're bringing you one more installment in the series. If you haven't been here the past few weeks, we're talking about love. It's February. Our world's talking about love and relationships and dating. So we're talking about love. Let's kick it off real strong and talk about some cringy things. Things that we should advise our students not to do.
I know the number one
in
thing
a relationship
that you're going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say, but you're going to say.
I bring it up all the time. Do not sit on the same side of the bench or booth with your significant other, partner, spouse, or whatever. The only exception to that
I was going to say, what's the exception?
is when you are out with another couple.
Oh, okay.
What's the other exception? There is no other
Yeah,
exception.
I was when you're waiting or...
No,
I don't.
No, not even when you're waiting for them.
That's what it is. Not when you're waiting for them.
If the other couple's not there yet, you have to sit on the other side so you can talk to each other.
When they get there.
Then when the couple gets there, you can switch
move.
over. Very important rule. If I see you out in public breaking this rule, I will say something about it. I will call your parents.
I mean, he might. Okay, another cringy thing. These little candy hearts. I picked up some for us. This one says, "Charm me."
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's weird. Oh, is it my turn to go?
Yeah, your turn.
Okay. This one's not that cringy. My last one's cringy. This one just says, "Call me." Do people even say that anymore?
Okay.
I feel like it's cringy because no one says it anymore.
That's true.
Try it out.
Do people call?
No.
You don't call each other.
No.
Okay. Now I know. This one says you're kind. Okay, but my cringiest one is long term ? Not like long distance. No. Do you think we're long term?
Long term. If you're asking, no, you know.
Okay.
This one's cringy. Guys, don't ever say this to a girl. Ooh la la. Yeah, we're gonna get that one out of here.
So yeah, cringe.
Yeah. We'll just leave it at that. There's a few more things we could hit on, but we just want to help you out. If you have any other good submissions, send them to us. But this is the last week of our series. It's been great so far, and let's just get real. Tonight, we are talking about sex. We're going to do it. We're going to talk about sex. I think that if the world is talking about it, and if songs are talking about it, and if every Netflix show is talking about it, why can't the church talk about it? The Bible talks about it. So let's just not act like it doesn't. So we're going to do it. And obviously, our culture you can't talk about relationships in our culture without talking about sex.
Yeah.
They're just one and the same. And so we feel like we can bring some wisdom on this because the Bible brings some wisdom on this. And because discussions about sex and sexuality are all over the place, they're changing, they're evolving, and you're just being exposed to things earlier and earlier. And a lot of times, students are not even seeking out these things. You're just exposed to it, and it just hits you in the face. And now you're thinking about those things, and so we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's very important. And also, I think just a disclaimer here, it's like we can be mature and talk about this.
Yeah.
There's so many things that, like, again, we can talk about in other settings and places. So we can be mature, and I think we can handle this. Yeah. Okay. Back to Lauren in middle school and high school. We've got a lot of you in middle school and high school, but we want your perspective. Was this something that was discussed? What were your thoughts and feelings about this when you were a teenager?
Not discussed very much.
Yeah.
Pretty naive, but like in a good way, whatever. But yeah, so not talked about a lot. I remember we talked about it in youth group one time. It was very cringy. I'm sure we talked about it more, but I was only there one time maybe. But I'm looking back now, I'm like thankful, I'm like, yeah, the church should be talking about this.
Yeah.
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 It maybe left to like piece things together in your head.
Yeah.
But I also think everyone is kind of left to piece things together.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the reason sometimes that it's cringy is that we like try to talk about it, but we don't do a very good job.
Yeah. Or not very clear. Or
Yeah. So then it's like, wait, what? And so we're going to try to do a not cringy version. Maybe you're already cringing wherever you're at, but if you don't be weird, then it's just not weird. That's my tip for this.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about it. So one of the things that was confusing to me when I was in middle school and high school was I feel like the thing that I just heard all the time was just don't do it. Like that was my training on sex. Don't do it. And I was like, okay, got it. Like why? Like what are we talking about?
Well, then it makes you think it's bad.
Yeah,
it's
well,
all
that's what you
bad.
learn. It's just like, it's bad, don't do it.
Right.
It's bad for you. Okay, but it's good if you're married. Like it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it was just, and maybe that's not even what was actually communicated to me. That's just what I remember.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. It was just like, it's bad. Stay away. Stay far away. And I remembered something that you had said earlier was like, it was like mysterious, but also really important.
Right.
Like this thing's super important, but it's bad. That was really confusing for me. And so I think that our culture, what our culture feeds and talks about is that like, what's the big deal? Sex is just a physical thing.
Yeah.
Like it's just a normal thing. It's just a part of life. It's just physical. Do what feels good. This thing exists for your pleasure. It's the way that you're really going to get to know someone, right? And like get to connect with them in a relationship. But it's just a physical thing. And the values that we place around it are, as long as no one gets hurt and everyone agrees, do whatever you want. That's sort of the rules that our culture has about it. No one gets hurt. Everyone agrees. Go for it. It's just physical. Like, what's the big deal? That's what I feel. I mean, I feel like it's just so casually talked about.
Yeah.
Thrown around all the place. Jokes, TV shows, songs, all these things. People make jokes in middle school, high school, on the butt, all this stuff. It's just like, it's normalized. And it's like, what's the big deal? It's just a physical thing. How do you feel like this idea has kind of crept in? And what does that do to people as they're like learning and trying to process relationships to live with that viewpoint in the world?
Well, it definitely leads to thinking a lot about the external first, you know, and what like feels good and what you're like looking for to be attracted to and stuff like that. So you think about that first. It makes it sound really casual. Yeah. Like you said, we water it down a little bit to just be like, it's not that big of a deal and it doesn't really mean much. I think about the show Friends. They all end up being with each other at some point. Yet at the end, they have these like deep, meaningful relationships also with each other to the end, which on TV, you're like, yay, this is great. But that's just not how it works in real life. Because I mean, when you think about sex and your like experiences, those are things that run so deep. So why is it this watered down thing, but we have so much like regret or shame or like these deep feelings about it? It can't be both ways. It's got to be one of them, you know? Yeah,
you bring up a good point because our culture sort of has contradicting views on this, because on one hand we say, oh, sex is just physical. Do it with whoever you want, whatever time, whatever place. Like it doesn't matter. It's like, as long as no one gets hurt, it's just physical. But then also our culture, there's so much shame and regret around bad decisions, or I wish I wouldn't have done that, or something happens to you.
Right.
That's a like an assault or a out of bounds thing when it comes to sex. And that cuts deep.
Yeah.
And there's trauma attached to that. And there's a lot of baggage that we carry and shame that we carry. If it was just physical, I don't think that would be true.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we have to pay attention to as Christians, is like, we like to say over here that it's just this physical thing. There's no strings attached. But in reality, I think we know that there's so much heavy emotional, mental, physical, even spiritual tension and baggage and weight that comes with mistakes, failures, or betrayals in that area. And so those things I don't think can be true at the same time. And so we want to talk about it because we do believe it's a big deal, and we don't want to talk about it in a shameful way. We want to talk about it in a very grace-filled way, the way that the Bible approaches it. And so as I think about the casual, just physical, no strings attached sex, I think about how many songs on the top 40 right now are about casual sex. Probably a lot. Social media, literally as you're just scrolling, not even looking for images, ideas, viewpoints, jokes, it's all over the place. We don't even have time to get into the access to pornography that is there. It's all over. It really is all over. And that's like a whole conversation for a different day. My point is that whether you want to be exposed to it or not, you're going to be exposed to it. And so that's why we got to get ahead or have the conversation. So when we listen to the lie that sex is just physical, what ends up happening is that we think, well, it's just for my pleasure. I just do what feels good. And as long as no one gets hurt, everything's going to be okay. And we want to talk about how that's just a straight up lie. Let's talk about scripture. Let's go there. When you open the Bible, Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, you will see that it does talk about sex. Actually, quite a bit. The origins of sex, how God created it, the design for it, the boundaries, a lot of different things. And there's a whole lot more in the Bible about sex than don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that's encouraging for you. We're going to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Two different parts of that chapter, but do you want to read the first part for us, 15 and 16?
Don't you realize that your bodies are actually part of Christ? Should a man take his body, which is a part of Christ, and join to a prostitute? Never. And don't you realize that if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her? For the scriptures say the two are united into one.
Yeah, interesting part of scripture here. What does this have to do with sex not just being a physical act?
Well, it says our bodies are actually parts of Christ.
Yeah,
we
if you're
are
a Christian.
Right, if you're a believer.
Yeah.
And we are connected to Christ. And so we can't separate the physical from the spiritual, even if we want to try.
Yeah.
Like it's just not how we are wired, and it's not how God made it.
Yeah, that's great. The other thing I think about here is that like during the time this was written, Paul's writing to a group of people who were like new Christians, and they were still trying to do stuff that they were doing before they were Christians.
Right.
And one of those things was that they would literally go to places in the towns and meet people, meet women, have a casual sex or a hookup because they thought it was just physical. And so Paul writes, no. If you're a Christian and if you're following God's rules and standards, this is way more than that.
Yeah.
He actually says you're uniting your body with someone else's body.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that the people who were hearing this were like, wait, hold up a second. I'm not uniting with somebody else's body. It's just a casual thing. And Paul's like, no. When that happens and takes place, you are not just uniting physically, you're uniting spiritually with another person. And then he references Genesis chapter 2, the second chapter in the Bible, when he says, for the scriptures say the two are united into one. This was a moment in the Bible where we are like, get the image of the first marriage, a union of two people becoming one in a sacrificial relationship, and that being a thing that unifies them together. So there's a lot of symbolism and significance that's connected to this, which I think is really interesting. And so we see it first right here as a piece of unity, two people becoming one, not just physically, spiritually. Secondly,
I think that's why like it is designed for marriage, because marriage is physical, spiritual, emotional. You are two becoming one.
Right.
And so that's how it makes much more sense as a believer in that aspect.
For sure. 100%. So let's move on a few more verses, and then we'll talk about the other thing that Paul speaks about here.
Yeah. 18 through 20. Run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. Don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who lives in you and who is given to you by God? You don't belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price, so you must honor God with your body. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about like God's design for sex when you read these additional verses with what we've already read?
So something that is, since it is something that is so internal and like done like to and with ourselves and someone else, it's like, it's not an external sin. Like I just using like stealing from a store or something, you're grabbing someone and taking it. That's not yours. That's hurting the person that you're stealing from in an external way. But like, this is something that I am doing that is hurting me like on the internal and the external. And so that's why I think that it like cuts so deep and sticks with you maybe, you know, so much more than your sin that I can ask for forgiveness for that I like did to somebody else only. You know?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I think that's a great way to put it. And that certainly doesn't mean we don't ask for forgiveness for a mistake there. We 100% do and can. I think the point that you're making here is like this thing, as much as we may not like to admit, is just in a separate category.
Yeah.
It's
and
a separate
category. I would argue to say not just having sex, but like sexual sins or like, sexuality, you know, physical, general, like intimacy or sexuality, they stick with me so much more and you can't shake it, you know?
Yeah. And I think you're right, because it is like unity of people. There's a lot more than just physical that's taking place. And let's just be honest. I think we know that.
Yeah.
Like we know that. You didn't even need this video to explain that to you. Even I would say many people who are not Christians know that.
Yeah.
They know it's different. They know there's something about it. Now, we don't want to admit that, but I think we understand that to a degree just because that's how we've been wired by God. And so a few things that are just sticking out to me real quickly here. Number one, it just says run away from immorality, not try hard to overcome it.
Right.
Because that's what you said that you were going to do last time. And the time before that. And the time before that. And the time before that. You were like, nah, I'm going to get it next time. Well, you didn't. And I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of that, right? But let's just not play, because Paul would have said, try harder next time and you can beat it, if that was true. And he didn't say that. He said, get out of there.
Run.
Turn around and run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. You're not going to tough this one out.
Yeah.
Secondly, and a lot of us, right, we put ourselves in bad positions and then we mess up and then we're like, oh, man, I'm so bad. And we're ashamed. And it's like, dude, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
What, like, come on, man. So, secondly is, we already hit on this, but like, there's just something different about sex than other sins you've discussed. Not sex being a sin in of itself, but immorality.
Yeah.
It's not just physical, affecting us on deep levels. But then lastly, this is the view we want you to get of sex, is not don't do it.
Yeah.
The view we want you to get is what Paul's describing here. This is a way that you can honor and worship God with your body. When it falls in alignment with God's plan, it's not, well, I'm just not allowed to do that.
Right.
No, it's I'm honoring and worshiping God with my body.
That's good.
And with all of me by obeying in this area. And I just never thought of it that way. I always viewed it as the negative. Well, this is what I can't do.
Right.
Instead of the positive, this is what I can do. I can honor God with this. And I think that's a really cool way that's very grace-filled, meaning if I messed up or made a mistake or did something I'm not proud of previously before I knew Jesus, or even when I did know Jesus, it's not all ruined for me. It's not all over for me. From this day forward, I can honor God with my body in this area. Okay, let's wrap it up here. What does honoring God with your body like practically look like for a teenager right now?
Very real. Yeah, very practically. I would say first is protecting the purity, guarding your heart, if you will, however you want to say that in a cringy way. But if you think about that, there is a person that I'm going to marry and they get this special intimate part of me. How hard is it to think about the shame or regret maybe that if I have regret in this area that I'm like bringing in to the person that I'm going to marry? You know, I want them to have this special part, this intimate part, and I don't want it to be tainted, you know, before then. And so maybe that's not the case. Maybe like there is already sin that you are forgiven for when you ask for forgiveness. However, that's a way I can protect myself and I can protect my future husband, you know, by choosing to honor God. Not choosing not to do it. So that'd be the first thing. And then secondly, you've already touched on it, but one way we can honor God is have those internal guidelines and those internal boundaries, maybe, if you will, about here's what I've already decided. I've thought about, I've prayed about sexual temptations. I've already decided here's where my boundary lies. So that when I am in a situation where we do find ourselves alone or there's something that I didn't expect to go on, I've already decided and it's already made, and I don't have to think about it in that moment and be like, oh no, like what am I going to do? It just takes all that pressure off. And it's just like, you know, I've already decided this. Oh, we're here. Okay, well, this is a situation. So maybe you decide we're not going to be alone in the same room together while we're dating or whatever. Maybe we decide that we're not doing anything that I wouldn't want my friend to like see in passing or in public or something, hold hands or a kiss or whatever. And we feel good about that. This isn't something I'm deciding with a person, with my partner or whatever. This is like for me, you know, my internal boundary and guideline. How do I feel? That decision's already made. And so one of the ways I can honor God is give my best effort in that area. I can think about it. I can pray about it beforehand, and I can set those like internal boundaries.
That's great.
Yeah.
Two final thoughts I have on this, and then we'll be done. Number one, this is really great wisdom. The problem is that it's not cool.
Yeah.
It's not cool. And none of your friends are probably doing this. Especially the ones that aren't Christians. So you're going to be the odd man out.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be weird. People aren't going to understand. And you may feel a little bit like you're alone in that. But I want to encourage you. It's like, This is how you're honoring and worshiping God with your body. And future you is going to have a lot to thank you for.
Yeah.
Secondly, what my experience with this area is that a lot of students and adults alike are struggling in this area because it's not just physical. There is a lot of shame when it comes to past mistakes. And here's what the enemy wants to do. He wants to tempt you and bait you. Oh, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's just physical. Looking at porn's not that bad. If it's just a few times, like all that stuff, and you may be tempted to believe a lie. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. And then the second that you fall into it or sin or commit, then he's going to turn around and go, I can't believe you did that.
Mm-hmm.
How could you?
Right.
How dare you? You're a failure. You're worthless. You're not good enough. You've ruined it.
Right.
You can't come back from this. That's the way he works in this area. He leads you to the cliff, and then when you jump off, he shames you for it.
Yeah.
I just want you to hear tonight that you can honor God with your body. It doesn't matter what the past has looked like for you. You can say from this day forward,
right,
I'm going to serve Jesus. I'm going to honor God with my body. I may slip, but I'm going to get back up again like the righteous person does. So I just want to encourage you to talk to people, to be open about this. You are so not alone in this. And let's just be honest. Sex is not just physical. Mm-hmm. It's spiritual. It's mental. It's emotional. It's all of it wrapped together. It's a beautiful thing. And we don't want any student leaving tonight going, well, I'm just not allowed to do it. No.
Or because this has happened, therefore, we've talked about how much weight it carries, but it's a sin and God forgives sins, you know? And so I want you to hear that for sure.
Yeah. And so we want you to hear tonight that sex has been designed by God for marriage. Outside of that, it is sinful, but we don't want you to have the view of, well, I just can't do it. Mm-hmm. No, the view is in the right hands and in the right boundaries. This is a beautiful thing that honors God and that honors my future spouse. So hope this is helpful for you guys. We love you guys so much. Thank you for rocking with us. Peace.
See ya.